Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. Thanks for joining today. We are back on the Coxton Sub, this time at the southern side of Biliary as far as the railroad is concerned. As far as the actual directions, this is the east side of town. And we're just going to work on a few things in this video. We're going to first up kind of dress up this transitional scene that opens up the Quarry branch there to the left. I have slightly considered lengthening this branch, but I've decided I would rather not. And then we're just going to let it be. But, you know, it doesn't really ship out enough rail traffic to get its own dedicated local. It also doesn't run unit trains, but that's okay because not every open pit industry on the planet creates that much gravel. But we're going to roll with it. I did spend a bit more time trying to work on this than I intended or wanted. It was being a bit of a nuisance. But that's PBR sometimes for you. It's still worth it anyways. And then we're going to dress up some road crossings. We're going to move on into the town of Biliary here, and then we end up working on the entertainment plant, which is really just a toy factory. But it's called, I think, Martin Entertainment, I think is what I had named it. So I didn't actually intend to work on that, but that's where we end up. So it is what it is. It actually turned out to be a great build. So it was one that I had already built and was fine with, but, you know, just kind of upping the standards a bit, making things look that extra little nice, you know. So here I was kind of playing around with the TRC crossings, trying to figure out if I wanted to actually put in some automatic gates or not. I decided not to, mostly because I didn't use a track stopper that was long enough. The angle was a little tight. And then here recently added this little highway out of town. Decided to connect it up with the highway overpass over to the east on the Med branch. I'm not going to really do much else with this. It's genuinely just a background thing. So, you know, of course, when I finish up this actual branch line right here, I'll get, you know, some of the finer trackside details really filled out. But I really like this template of small bushes that I managed to grab by complete chance. That was an awesome set of small bushes. It was just the right amount where it wasn't too much, but it, you know, was enough to clear up, or not clear up, sorry, but it was enough to like create the illusion of, you know, enough underbrush and things like that without being overkill. You know, that's always the hard part, is finding the balance between selective compression, good representation, and just scenery overkill. But, you know, I'll probably dress up just a couple of things along the right of way there, so that, you know, if you have a camera view looking up toward the highway, you can actually see the highway. So, and then, not that you guys might have noticed, probably not, but it bothered me. I had a double track, what is it called? Abutment right here. And I realized that on one side of the bridge, it looked weird, and I didn't like it. And it was a really, really small problem. You know, I've had these abutments here for over a year and just never noticed it until yesterday. And I was like, shoot. So I fixed it. So now we have two one-track abutments, but it was giving me a bit of a headache. You know, the selection process can be pretty annoying at times. Life goes on. And then I knew I wanted to add a guardrail here. So we're going to get all that figured out. It's not picture perfect, but, you know, I don't make routes to be picture perfect. I make them to be reasonably good, but extremely operational and enjoyable with a lot of depth. That's what I go for. And not so much scenery depth, but rather operational depth, replayability, you know, flexibility in operations, so that it's not the same thing every time. Ooh, sorry, excuse me. As an example, on this railroad, I still haven't even run every train once yet. There's like 50-something trains you can run, each with a, you know, with a different symbol technically, and that's honestly a bit overkill. But I don't care. That's what I play this game for. And yeah, you know, a secondary division that's not even, you know, a primary main line, if it had that many trains, most of them would probably either be through trains or, you know, unit trains, or it would just be like a 200 or 300 mile long subdivision. But, you know, this isn't any of those things, and that's okay because it's fun and it's action packed and there's lots to do. And, you know, you can run long enough trains for pretty pictures with whatever power you want, or you can, you know, plug into the operation system that I've set up and you can try to operate it the way it's intended, which for me is obviously the only thing I do because that's why I built it. But yeah, once we get past Biliary, this is going to be a high mark here for the route, because this will be the last area where all of the scenery was done in Tane originally. And so once this part is finally finished and upgraded, in every way, because it's already upgraded in some ways, but once it's upgraded in every way, then I will finally have a route that no longer resembles what it did when I started it in Tane, and it will be very, very close to getting to a releasable version. I am considering the first release not being completely polished the way I would like, but definitely, finished as far as scenery goes. That way, people wouldn't have to wait so much, and then I could eventually get, a more finished update going on. And as time goes on, we'll see what happens. I'm not sure. I'm still debating on that, but it's already been several years in development, and I think it's time to get a version out there personally. So that's at least the current thought plan. So here's the toy factory. Right now, I've got it set up. I don't think I'm going to change the operating system on it, but essentially it receives steel and lumber and makes toys. You could technically, to the warehouse tracks that are on the right, you could technically ship cars of plastics. They could just use a pneumatic hose to unload the plastics from there. They don't, there doesn't have to be a dumping system with hoppers like that. They can just use pneumatic hoses and things to get what they need. You can definitely ship plastics there if you'd like to. I don't think I originally intended to do that. The setting is the early 1970s. Plastics were clearly available, but they were still making a lot of toys back then that weren't exclusively plastic. So, there's some flexibility there. So I decided to keep it. But yeah, if you wanted to ship plastic cars, you could. But essentially, I've got it inbound steel, inbound lumber, and then it ships out toys, mostly to the warehouses in either Coxton or Johnsville. And then from there, it gets shipped in, LCL LCL crates and things, and goes off to different towns and stuff. But other than that, you can also ship full carloads to some of the major warehouses, either at the port in Coxton or off the route, whichever you want to do. So there's flexibility. But this is definitely served by the local here in Biliary. Pretty much every industry here that's not on the Riverport branch in Biliary, pretty much every industry is served by the same local, which runs out of Monson Yard. I mean, technically the Riverport branch is also served by the same local, but it's served by like the second trick of that local. All right, so one crew would switch all these industries, and then once that crew gets off duty, the next crew would come and switch the little port, because the operation is a little harder. Plus, there's not a lot of track space ever if you're running this little local, and you're always having to dodge the main and the yard, because everybody's really busy here. This yard is a bottleneck if you don't run it correctly, which I like that personally. It creates a challenge. Obviously, if you're running in single player, there's not really ever going to be a bottleneck because you just have to do everything yourself anyways. But if I ever manage to get this into a content pack for multiplayer, and then if people wanted to play it, Monson Yard here in Biliary would certainly be a potential bottleneck and a great operating challenge for a yard crew to stay on top of. So you've got, let's see, out of Monson Yard here, you've got the local to Fulton and Shifnal. You've got 2 locals up the Med branch. You've got the Biliary local. You've got 2 tricks of that. What else do you have? You've got tracks for storing outbound cars, either on northbound or southbound trains. Yeah, so it gets pretty busy. And then there's a couple of, ready tracks and a loop track and whatnot. So it's not bad. It's not bad. But I think with a dedicated yard crew, you could get it all done. So this area I'm going to keep. I just wanted to, raise the standards of the scenery a bit. And the other thing I'll do is change some of the city details kind of off to the right of this scene. Not in this actual footage, but in the future. But yeah, we're going to keep working on getting the parts of Biliary that are right next to the track. We're going to keep working on getting them to that next level and making them look a lot more presentable. I'm still committed to using only download station or built-in assets. There's a couple of packaged assets, but they only use the content packs that are built into the game, essentially the ones that everybody has, and I'm not using any payware. So I'm definitely staying committed to that in an effort to reduce, hopefully, the amount of unknowns to 0. I did manage to get 0 unknowns on my KCS Greenville subdivision, and ideally that would be the same result here. I don't think I'm going to necessarily have it flawless, but I'll definitely keep a database of assets that could potentially lead to unknowns. But I do have a helpful team that is, whenever I send out the updated versions to them to check for unknowns, they check for me from different versions, even from Trains 22, and give me some feedback, tell me try to plan around that. So that's been extremely helpful. Just getting the industrial fence laid out here. Decided I didn't want to continue it through those bushes because it just wasn't worth the effort, and you're not going to see it anyways. So we just let it go. But to be fair, at first I wasn't the greatest fan of the buildings I chose for this, but then I realized they actually would work just fine. This is not a massive, billion toys a day kind of toy factory. It's a small one that gets, just a few rail cars a day. And I'm happy with that. And so it's okay that the buildings are, semi-split and moved around. It's all good. They can just use forklifts to run pallets between them. They don't have to be connected because not everything is connected. There's a huge wire mill not too far from my house. They make aluminum and copper wire, and they have a ton of buildings that are not connected. And whenever they have product that needs to move between buildings, they load them up on trolleys and and shove them or pull them, do what they got to do. And that's just how it is. Industries are not always just one big building. So, plus two, since, we're modeling something that was built before the setting of 1970, it would make sense that it wasn't so huge. The economy and the size of factories really started to change after a lot of the manufacturing in this country started to get outsourced. So, factories that stayed here got bigger. Companies used bigger facilities because it saved money, helped them stay competitive. And then the smaller ones got either closed down, outsourced, or whatever, And everything I just said is not exactly true for every single industry out there, but it's just a generalization of the general industrial manufacturing market. So take it for what it's worth. Don't nitpick. But yeah, just, decided I'd add some bushes around and kind of make it look like there's some stuff growing up along the side. They're probably a little too big, but I'm not really worried about it, honestly. I really didn't want to use 53-foot containers, I'll be honest, but there's not a ton of good-looking 40-foot containers out there that I have found that are also on the download station. That's the key. There's a lot of great 40-foot trailers and containers that are like, third-party assets, but then that means you guys would have to go get them yourself, and I don't want to do that. So, staying committed to my my download station requirement does mean that some compromises have to be made. It's like, I know we didn't have 53-foot trailers in 1970. But you know what? We're going to overlook that detail, and we're going to let it go. And we're not going to nitpick it for that kind of stuff. If I really wanted to model everything to a particular era exactly, I would have to just get tons and tons of custom assets made. And that would take a lot of time and money. And I just don't want to pay thousands of dollars for someone's time to make me a bunch of very period-specific stuff. My modeling interests are just too broad. I've got a steam route I'm working on from the 1950s. I've got a transition era route I'm working on. I've got another steam route from the 20s. I've got an 1880s narrow gauge route I'm building. I've got a couple of modern routes, and this one's set in the 70s, which is, 60s, 70s is one of my favorite eras of railroading. So, but we are getting pretty much here to the end, so I'm going to leave you with a couple cinematics. I haven't done cinematics in a while, but I think you guys will enjoy these. But thanks for watching today. Hopefully you have enjoyed it, and I will catch you guys out there somewhere on the next one. See you guys later.